everybody. Thank you again.
Yeah.
I ducked out because I got a beep. Uh-oh.
Hey y'all, thank you for being here. Might wait just another second. I got another couple people in the lobby, I think, and then we'll get started.
Lindsay, I will continue to watch the lobby and I will also monitor the chat in case anyone has any questions.
Okay, perfect. And I'll try and stop throughout like usual to answer any questions anybody may have, but we can go ahead and get started. So today we wanted to get everybody together, kind of one, to just kind of establish this office hours cadence like we talked about, just addressing some key components of the BEAD program as we get prepared to execute subawards and kick everything off. So for those of you who were on the office hours last week, thank you for being there, and then thank you for being here today. But Angel is recording this, so if there is someone who can't attend from your team or you need to go back and look at anything, we can get that recording to you. So today what we wanted to talk through was something that we've talked about before, but wanted to go into it in a little bit more detail, and that is the milestone reimbursement schedule. So wanted to remind you guys of what the actual reimbursement schedule is, and then the required documents that are going to be needed at each milestone to substantiate completion, to then trigger that reimbursement, and answer any questions you guys may have about that. Am going to give a couple case study examples for some little nuances that might apply to some of you, but not to all. So if you have questions during that portion, just feel free to stop me. So I'm going to share my screen just to go over a few basics before we dive into the documentation itself. So let's see. So as a reminder for everybody, this is our milestone schedule with some dummy numbers in here just to be able to illustrate. If you don't have a copy of this and want one, just send an email to that msbead@beam.ms.gov email address or myself, and I can get you a copy just for you guys to have. So there are, I think there's 9 milestones total, if I'm counting correctly. And there are 4 pre-deployment disbursements, which of course would happen out the gate. Those are the items that are prior to your NEPA being able to execute construction and any deployment activities. So everything that would be within those limited permissible activities that we've talked about before. So that is your subaward execution, engineering design, NEPA, and then BABA compliance are all of your pre-deployment disbursements. And then all of the ones following that are based on passing BSLs and actually constructing the networks. So I put together this draft document. I will say some of these documents are subject to change, so this is not fully comprehensive, and some of these might fall off as we kind of get a little bit further, but wanted to have this at least as a starting point to be able to tell you guys what's going to be required to substantiate completion of each milestone, as well as obtain that reimbursement at each stage. So last week we did talk about subaward execution, since that one will happen fairly quickly after you guys actually do execute subawards with the state of Mississippi BEAM office. So what will be required for that one, of course, is the executed subaward agreement itself. And then, like we talked about last week, either your letter of credit, which would be needed prior to the execution of that agreement, or your performance bond, which we talked about is no later than 60 days after subaward execution. Would need both of those things in order to substantiate the completion of that milestone. And then something you're going to see throughout every single milestone is something, and there's probably a better word for it. I don't have this like accounting brain, but accounting system expenditure export is what I'm calling it. There's probably a better term for it, but something that shows every expenditure that is tied to the reporting project. And something that our team talked about was in the next month or so, probably having an individual call with each of our subrecipients. So you'll be getting some reach out from our team just to be able to meet with you guys and whoever would be appropriate from your accounting team that would be involved in the process for reimbursements and payments and all of that, so that we can kind of see any type of systems you guys already have in place, make sure that it's exactly what we would need to see in order to review. But we just need to be able to tie back all expenditures to the reporting project that you're being reimbursed for. At the time of milestone reimbursement, we're not going to be going into each individual invoice or substantiating payments at that time. We just need to see the total cost charged to the project at the time of milestones. When we get into expenditure reviews and sampling processes, that's going to be during our quarterly desk review process that we've mentioned before. And we'll have another webinar that goes a little bit more in depth into what that process is going to look like to substantiate those costs. But at the time of milestone reimbursement, the flexibility that NTIA gives with this fixed amount subaward model is that if you complete a milestone and you can substantiate that you did in fact complete it, then you can be reimbursed that established percentage of your award that's in your subaward agreement. So just that accounting system expenditure report will be kind of throughout every single milestone, but it's more substantiating that the milestone is completed. Any questions around subaward execution milestone at this time?
And before we take any questions, just wanted to add to what Lindsay just said. I was just on a call with NTIA and they were talking about risk assessments and what they're expecting us to do as continuous monitoring activities. And one of those things that we as the eligible entity have to make sure that we can that we're monitoring is that you guys are incurring the expenses and incurring your match. So that's just one of the reasons that we are asking for that accounting expenditure report at every milestone, so that we can tell NTIA that we are performing the monitoring activities that they require of us.
Yeah, thank you, Angel. That's a good point. So that's subaward execution, very simple. The next pre-deployment milestone that we have is the engineering and design. So along with that accounting system expenditure report that we talked about, there's a couple of bullets that we've gotten from a conversation with all of the being contracted engineering firms, things that they're anticipating needing to look at prior to being able to disperse that milestone. And a reminder for everyone, this is at the reporting project level. So if you have a deployment project broken into 2 reporting projects, you would need documentation for each of those reporting projects. For each of these, they're looking for things like 100% design for the project areas, including the locations, fiber lines, etc. The PDF of your final plans, bill of materials for each of those project areas, and then scheduling type documents. And for the disbursement milestones, they are broken into the 10, 25, 50, 75, and 100% milestones. So they're requesting that each of the breakout for the engineering and design be, about those, because they're going to have to be tied back to that in the future milestones. So those are the types of documents. Of course, that list could expand when we get there, but do know that you guys are at least starting this process or planning to start this process, whether that's prior to, kind of at your own risk, I guess, a subaward, or right upon execution. So that is what we're looking for engineering and design. So they'll review that, make sure that it is complete, and then we'll take a look at that accounting system expenditure report, make sure that we've got that on file prior to dispersing those funds. I'm not sure if anybody has any questions about that particular milestone at this time.
I have not seen anything in the chat so far.
Okay, thank you, Angel, for monitoring that.
Oh, hold on. What have we got?
Pamela just
slide that. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, Pamela, we can send this out. Just knowing that it is a draft, be expanded, or things could kind of change within it. But just as an initial kind of awareness, happy to send this to you guys.
We are also recording the webinar with Lindsay's explanations, and we will get this uploaded to the BEAM website along with the recording from last week's office hours. We'll plan to get those uploaded by the end of this week.
Perfect. Okay, so if no one else has specific questions on that one, I'll move to NEPA. This one has the potential to get a little, it's not crazy complicated, but do want to explain it with a couple examples or hypothetical situations so that everyone's on the same page. So definitely stop me if you guys have questions when it comes to this particular milestone. So the two things, or technically kind of three things, we're going to need to complete the NEPA milestone from you guys are the expenditure report that we talked about. And then for each NEPA assessed area, you are going to get a NTIA final decision memo saying that it has, everything for NEPA has been met and the project can move forward to construction. So that will be the first one. The second one is the BEAM office will actually initiate from the state a notice to proceed. That will follow. Of course, you guys are aware that there's an 811 meeting requirement to have that meeting prior to construction beginning. So once we get all consensuses from other state agencies and permitting agencies and everything, BEAM will be able to initiate a notice to proceed that will release you guys to begin post or deployment actual activities for construction. So those are simple documentation wise of what's needed. There'll be several different documents needed to actually get to this milestone. And I know that the engineers will be doing like a NEPA specific documentation requirement webinar in the future to be able to help talk you guys through that process. But aside from everything needed to actually obtain the final decision memo from NTIA and the notice to proceed from BEAM, those are the only two documents that we're going to have to look at to substantiate that actual milestone. So the reason this one gets a little tricky, so try and think about the projects you have while I'm talking it out. To backtrack a little bit, everybody had a deployment project or several deployment projects in the final proposal. The BEAM office gave you guys the opportunity to break those down into your reporting projects. Some needed to break them down further, some chose not to. It was totally up to you guys how you wanted to phase out your projects. So let's say you have a deployment project that is broken into two reporting projects. Reporting project A, reporting project B. So reporting project A did not need to be broken down further for NEPA purposes. That is A-OK. So reporting project A, NEPA assessment area A, they're aligned. So when you get your final decision memo from NTIA for reporting project A, that's satisfied, and that reporting project can meet that milestone requirement in its entirety because everything in reporting project A was NEPA cleared. So you can obtain that reimbursement request. Let's say you have reporting project B, and after looking at it with your engineers and your consultants, you decided that it needs to be broken down into multiple NEPA assessment areas underneath it. So reporting project B now has NEPA area A, or NEPA area 1 and NEPA area 2. Let's say NEPA area 1, super easy assessment. It might even have a categorical exclusion and can move through the process super simple, no problem. Let's say NEPA area 2 underneath reporting project B gets held up for whatever reason. There's a specific permit that you have trouble obtaining or some other thing that might be holding it up in the review process. The locations, the BSLs in NEPA area 1 underneath reporting project B have the clarity from NTIA and from the BEAM office to proceed forward with construction for just those BSLs. Remember, that's in your subaward agreement. Can't touch dirt that doesn't have those reviews and notices to proceed on them. So NEPA 1 can move on. NEPA 2, underneath reporting project B, held up for whatever reason, you cannot start construction on anything, any BSL, any area that is included in NEPA 2. So let's say 50% of your BSLs for your reporting project are in NEPA area 1. So when you start to get to construction, because you do have the clearance to begin building these, you might get to at least 10% BSL completion in just NEPA area 1 and can obtain this milestone once we get to all these different requirements to substantiate it. But NEPA area 2 hasn't gotten there yet. There is a hypothetical world where you could obtain this reimbursement request prior to obtaining your NEPA milestone, because all NEPA assessed areas underneath the reporting project have to obtain all clarity and notice to proceed forward before the NEPA milestone can be released for reimbursement. So I know there were some questions at the beginning of if milestones have to be contiguous and in order. Answer is no, just because there is a world where you could begin obtaining BSL completion milestone reimbursements prior to your NEPA milestone, if not all NEPA areas are cleared underneath that reporting project kind of at the same time. I know that was a lot, so Angel, help correct me if I missed anything or add any clarity.
I think let's pause for questions, let people digest for just a second. But we do have one question in the chat. Pamela asked, did the Mississippi Permitting Roundtable satisfy the 811 meeting requirement, or does each BEAD awardee need to meet with 811 individually? The answer to that is it does not satisfy your requirement as an awardee to meet with 811. The Permitting Roundtable satisfied a requirement that NTIA made on us, the eligible entity, that we have to make efforts to streamline the permitting process and hold some permitting roundtables. It's possible that we may have more of those larger meetings, but as part of your sub-award agreement, you guys do have to meet with 811 for each of your projects before you start construction, or it may be that it's 2 or 3. I'm not entirely sure how granular those have to be. It didn't sound like at the permitting roundtable that they have to be extremely granular. It may be like a North Mississippi, South Mississippi, Central Mississippi type thing. And the documentation to substantiate that meeting, if it's not in this document, we can take that back and get back to you.
Yeah, we'll take that one back. Maybe chat with them of anything specific that they would need.
Does anybody have any questions about the reimbursement milestones and everything that Lindsay has covered so far?
To put all of that into a nutshell, in like super, super simple terms, you cannot obtain the NEPA milestone reimbursement request until all NEPA assessed areas in your reporting project have the stamp of approval from NTIA and the BEAM office. So if there's a subset that gets held up for whatever reason, cannot obtain BEAD milestone or the NEPA milestone for that reporting project.
And just to add a little bit to that, this is to give you guys that flexibility, because we do understand that the NEPA assessment and all of those approvals may take some time, especially for some later phases or later NEPA project areas within these reporting projects. So like Lindsay said, you can proceed to the construction reimbursement milestones for those areas that have received the notice to proceed. So in Lindsay's example, if half of your BSLs for that reporting project have received that notice to proceed, then yes, you can receive those reimbursements for the construction milestones up to, in that example, it would be the 50%. What we will be asking you guys to do, just to help us in our documentation, is when you submit those construction milestones, also go ahead and attach again your notice to proceed that you received from our office, just so if OIG or someone else comes back to us in a couple of years and asks us to prove that you guys had received a notice to proceed for those BSLs that we paid for, then we will have that documentation right there in your reimbursement request.
Yeah, that's a good point, Angel.
I do not see anything else in the chat if you want to keep going, Lindsay.
Sure can. But if anything comes across, y'all just drop it in. So next we're going to move on to BABA compliance, the Buy America, Build America compliance portion of the BEAD program. So of course we are going to need that expenditure report again. And then for BABA compliance, for materials and equipment needing to comply, we will need a bill of materials that we've already kind of talked about before for another milestone. We're going to need the purchase orders or planned purchase orders for the material and equipment that you're needing for the program and for that build out, so that we can check that they are in compliance with the BABA requirements. And then any vendor certifications that they are BABA compliant, or any type of, attestations, we can go review those as well. We do have a tool almost complete that we want to provide to you guys that I think is going to be extremely helpful. So NTIA has put out a kind of like a pre-screened approved BABA compliant vendors list to choose from, so that you already know if you're choosing from this list, you know that these materials by this vendor are BABA compliant. Our team's put together and is finalizing now a tool that even consolidates that further, brings you to their website, gives a list of the materials that are BABA compliant to at least help. If someone's not on that list, doesn't mean necessarily that they are not BABA compliant or the materials that they're selling are not BABA compliant. You just might need some extra certification or review to ensure that that is the case prior to purchasing them. So as best you can, planning out your materials and your equipment, or if you've already purchased some or have some on hand that are BABA compliant that are going to be used for this BEAD program, this is what we're going to need. I will say that I understand at the beginning of the program, you may say we need this much XYZ, and then you start building it out and you realize you need more XYZ. That's totally fine. Part of our quarterly desk review process that we've mentioned is going to be kind of a continual BABA compliance check with any additional materials that have been purchased since we last talked to you guys. So it will be a requirement to keep a running list of all additional materials and equipment purchased with that BABA compliance, and we'll review that every quarter when we meet with you guys for your quarterly desk review. So to get this portion at the beginning, it's all of your plans, everything that you think and ties it to your bill of materials that you think you're going to need, but knowing that as the program continues to build out, that there might be some ad hoc purchases made that we'll still review to ensure BABA compliance there as well. But to obtain the milestone, it's just the planned bill of materials, purchase orders, certifications, those documents. Any questions?
Right. I don't see any new questions in the chat. But while we give them a minute, you guys know that my job is to be the overly cautious person in the BEAM office to make sure we are always staying in compliance. So I know that we've talked a lot on our office hours calls about the quarterly desk reviews. Just know, and it was brought up on the NTIA call I was just participating on, that there is a possibility if a risk profile changes, or if someone needs a little extra help or runs into a situation where you need a little more guidance, that those quarterly desk reviews might happen more frequently than quarterly. We don't anticipate that. We have full faith that you guys have it under control, but just giving that caveat from the beginning that when we say quarterly desk review, that may happen more frequently if you guys need a little extra help.
Yeah, good point.
Lindsay, I don't see any questions, so I think we can keep going.
Okay, perfect. So those are your pre-deployment milestones with those limited permissible activities. Now we're at the deployment disbursements, and these for 10, 25, 50, 75, and 100, all documentation is the same throughout. You just have to prove that you have passed the broadband serviceable locations to that percentage, to at least that percentage. And it's got a little caveat here that is to find when the locations are eligible for service is what we're considering passing, and I think most people do. Anyways, so that is the definition. Once you hit each of those percentages, these are the documents that the engineers are going to need in order to substantiate that completion. So of course, also that expenditure report that I mentioned. So the 811 coordination, we'll have that on file from the NEPA as well, but making sure that the actual tickets are being put in to make sure that all of that is in compliance. We want to make sure, it'd be awesome if there was like no issues in doing all of these build out for all of BEAD. But so then you have your network as built versus with the plan versus the actual detailed, any type of construction photos that you have during your build out, ISP construction inspection reports, some different reports going down. This is not my area of expertise, if y'all can't tell. Listing of locations served versus actual, and then the permits required in hand. And then we'll have to ask you guys to certify the percent complete, and then the work has been done in compliance with the all environmental requirements. So that is the same, and of course that list could grow documentation wise, or some things could be knocked off once the engineers kind of get to that stage. I know we're a while away from this, but good to kind of be aware of it from the beginning, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So that will continue all the way through 100%. 100% does require a few extra documents just to make sure that everything truly is 100% built. So that one would include an updated BOM, maybe a couple other things in here, but I could be glazing over them. Oh yeah, we've got a couple things from the general terms and conditions that are added, like the documentation of conduit access points. So that is, of course, I would love for it to be as speedy as possible, but we're a little ways away from that. So we can have maybe another webinar specifically when people get closer to that. And then the very last one is our contingency or closeout milestone. So that'll be our expenditure report. And then there's some general terms and conditions that you have to comply with in order to be fully compliant with the BEAD program. This list could grow too as we get to that point, kind of towards the end, which will be an exciting day. But that will be kind of our closeout reimbursement. Just want to make sure that once everything's tied up in a pretty little bow and we kind of get a closeout package from you guys, that we can disperse that milestone. So the construction and post-deployment milestones are, I don't want to say the easiest, but they're the most consistent because they're the same for the majority of the period of performance. So once you get the hang of one, you kind of got the hang of the rest of them of what needs to be required. So again, that's at the reporting project level. All of these are. So just wanted to talk you guys through that. But that is the flow of the milestone reimbursement process. Just wanted to show you guys some documents that might be required. You can go ahead and have kind of some internal policies and procedures in place of how to house these as the program starts going after subaward execution. And hopefully knowing this all on the front end will make everything a little bit easier on the back end when we do get to that stage. And I will say too, for those of you who might have a capital projects fund award, you might be a little bit more familiar with the ready.net portal that the BEAM office uses for reimbursements, but it will be the same for BEAD. And if you're not aware, no worries. For everybody, we'll have another demo to go through what it will look like to actually request these funds and upload that documentation. So yeah, that'll be upcoming once the portal team has a chance to get everything built out for you guys. So any questions? I know that was a lot of information.
Lindsay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat. And I think Kyle got caught up on a different call, so he's not here to start going down the line and calling people out. So I guess I get to be that person this time. I'm going alphabetical. Ashley Click from TEC. TEC, do y'all have any questions?
I think the only note that I had that I wanted to ask about was any type of like look back option. Are we only to start work as soon as the agreement's signed? Can we get a head start on some design, or do we have to wait until we get that signature and go?
So with the caveat that you guys can only incur expenses on those limited permissible activities. So nothing construction related until you have attained your NEPA clearance and also received your notice to proceed from our office.
Okay. Does that include
guys,
like getting the design started so that we can have something to submit to NEPA? Because it's hard to get some of these
that does not,
environmental approvals without knowing where we're
that is-
going.
engineering design, I believe, is specifically listed in the limited permissible activities. I will refer you back to whatever is it in the BEAD FAQs, Lindsay?
It is, but yeah, Ashley, to answer your question, you're allowed to do planning and anything prior to, like, that is a limited permissible activity and will be necessary for that engineering and design milestone and NEPA. The only thing I will say prior to a subaward executed, that is at, I guess, your own risk That we would love it if you guys wanted to go ahead and get started so that when things are executed, it can move a lot faster.
And
Yeah, I
have
guess that was
heard
my
from
question. Can we go ahead and do that and still be able to get reimbursed for the design even though the contract hasn't been signed yet? I know we can't submit for reimbursement yet, but would those invoices be allowed to be submitted later?
They would, and we have received documentation from a couple of the awardees that they've already begun that process. Just make sure that you are
Awesome.
adhering to any applicable 2 CFR 200 procedures. Lindsay, I don't know all of the accounting disclaimers to give.
No, you're fine. Yeah, just Ashley, for right now, if you'll just keep you're more than welcome to, but any costs associated with it, like I talked about for that expenditure report tying to the
Mhm.
program, we're just
Yeah.
gonna be able to see that all of that is, tied to the BEAD program so that we can look at them in the future.
Okay.
So just they're all documented appropriately.
All right.
And I
Thank
did
you so
see
much.
that Mike Archibald had his hand raised, but it looks like he's lowered it. I did see you, Mike. Do you still have a
Thank you.
question?
No, that's okay. I don't know if you guys have heard anything or not, Angel or Lindsay. After kind of doing the project cost profiles on all our awards, our BABA compliancy is over the 5% de minimis. You know, a lot of our
Mhm.
areas are rural, right? And there are no manufacturers that make galvanized hardware, brackets,
Mhm.
nuts, bolts in the United States. So we do not, it's not that we're not going to use them, it's just that there's none available. Can you kind of speak to how that's going to impact us and what's that going to mean, I guess, for the
What is
awardees?
what is your question? I guess is
Well, I know
5%
we have
the
a waiver. Yeah,
threshold?
yeah, the 5% de minimis waiver we get for steel, minor component steel parts, right?
Okay.
With our budget,
Uh,
it's going to be over that. It's going to be significantly over 5%. Does that I guess exclude us from capitalizing on our awards, or what's the impact of not meeting that 5%?
Meaning, are you asking about the reimbursement 5%?
No, there's a BABA requirement that there's
Oh,
a
okay.
5% allocation to use non-BABA parts, right? And our budgets
Oh,
are significantly over the 5%, which means we can't be BABA compliant on certain parts.
Yeah.
Lindsay, do you have an answer for that one?
I know this has been raised a couple times to NTIA at some points. Let me take that one back, Mike, and talk a little bit with my team. I think we were planning on doing kind of just like a BABA compliant office hours similar to this one at some point soon, because that will be kind of a quick milestone following subaward execution. So let me get an answer for you on that, and I'll get it back to the whole group when we do.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah, thanks.
I know high level, what we have heard from NTIA is that they are not looking to expand any waivers at this point. But like Lindsay said, we'll take this back, ask the question, because I'm sure if one of you guys is running into that problem, I feel certain that it's not isolated and that everyone else is going to run into it at some point. So we may just
Yeah, I
need
mean,
to escalate
we're
that
even
question.
Yeah, we're even working with the top 3 suppliers, and none of them can find it. It's an industry-wide problem, and they're all saying it, right? We just don't know who's raising their hands up with NTIA yet.
Okay.
Exactly. No, completely understand. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
Pamela's question in the chat, Angel, no NIST approval yet.
That is correct. We did receive another round of curing from NIST last week, but we also submitted our responses to them at the end of last week. So now everything's back in their court. We're trying to respond when they do reach out to us for additional information just as quickly as possible. I could shake my crystal ball, Mike, and try to guess, but I would absolutely be wrong.
That's fine. Yeah, thank you.
I was hoping it would be before now. I think we are one of only 2 states now that haven't received NIST approval, and that kind of hurts my ego a little bit, but we are at their mercy.
I think our position was, we didn't want to proceed with those pre-award or pre-construction activities until NIST because we thought maybe our risk was greater. You know what I mean?
I
So
really, at this point, the questions that they are asking are just very minor. They're not, they're more like questions about the state of Mississippi, not about our projects or any of you guys, any of the information that you guys have supplied. So it seems, if I were to take the temperature, these are just like the final I's and T's that they're dotting and crossing.
yeah, thanks.
I hope that helps a little bit. Let's see. Gunnar, do you have any questions for us?
Not right now.
All right. Let's see. I saw Connexon team. Do you guys have any questions?
I actually have a question, and
Okay.
this is regarding like the milestones prior to NEPA approval. Do we
Mhm.
have to incur any cost for, like, say, the subaward execution from our match amount to be able to meet those first 4 milestones?
That is a good question. We do recognize that, so subaward execution is 5% of total award for everybody.
Right.
For most people, that's a big chunk of the award, a little bit disproportional to the work done at that stage. We would suggest when you do that accounting expenditure kind of export, we know y'all did a ton of work for applications. A ton of effort went into preparing those, time spent, hours, and all of that. So if there's a way to kind of allocate those back to the project that you want to provide to us, just be able to substantiate some costs with that, you can. But I know the match amount is not quite going to be there. So the one thing I did not mention for contingency / closeout, something we're going to do in the quarterly desk review process prior to getting to that last milestone is we're going to be doing kind of a health assessment about halfway through your deployment milestones to see the actual costs incurred and match, and see there's going to be a point we know where those start to line up a little bit better or even get exceeded. So that'll be kind of our health assessment. If there gets to a point where you have not met your match requirement, we're going to have to do some budget modification adjustments, making sure that you are staying compliant with that, because that cannot be changed. So at the beginning, no, but throughout the program, your match will have to stay at the percentage that you applied for, if that makes sense, throughout the whole thing, not at each particular milestone.
So what we're going to be looking for in that accounting report that you send with each of your milestones is for y'all to spit out a report of what you have incurred. We're not going to limit your disbursement for your milestone bait to match what you've incurred so far, because we understand that that's going to be different. But we just need to see that you guys are monitoring and identifying what is match and what is award, so that we can tell NTIA, because they are asking us to make sure along the way that you guys are accounting for your match also. So it doesn't have, it's not like there's a hard and fast rule that you have to document that it stays exactly that at each milestone, but we just have to keep a running tally of how it's shaping up.
And once our numbers guy Kyle Skeen is back in office, I will ask him to talk about that on another office hours to be able to probably better explain it than I did.
Thank you, Lindsay. That's exactly what I wanted to know. Now, when will the portal be open?
So right now,
well, hold on. What do you mean by that?
Is there like a portal that could possibly you can get like some form templates or anything along those lines?
So our portal already exists. That's where you guys submitted your applications
Okay.
and did your curing and all of those things. So there are members of your team that are very
Great.
familiar with our portal. They, you're with Connexon, right?
Yes.
Clinton and those guys are intimately familiar because it's the same portal we use for CPF.
Okay.
So if you're asking for templates and forms for the BEAD program, those have not been finalized yet, because as you guys all know, we are all still awaiting fine tuning. What would you call them? Suggestions / requirements that we have to use from NTIA. But a lot of our templates are in their final stages, but the certifications for reimbursements and the like should be very similar to what we have in our CPF program.
And the only other thing I'll say, the first portion, I guess, that like you probably can't see for those that do have portal access already, is that project plan that Logan was able to demo for us last week. And if you didn't see that, we can get the recording. But that will be the first, I guess, node open for the BEAD program outside of applications. So when that does get released, I think Angel will probably release that to them when we do actually get that NIST approval, right?
That is the plan. They are waiting on the final version of our grant agreement so that the coders can finish building that. We did receive feedback from some of you guys on our subaward agreement, and we've met with our legal team to assess those comments. And our hope is one day this week to get you guys the feedback on what the comments that you submitted. So it is all in process. It should be, I would think, within the next month or so that you would be able to see that. But like I said, we did record last week's office hours, and by the end of this week, we'll have that recording on our website. All right, so let's see who else. Pamela, TJ from Comcast, do you guys have any other questions?
None for me. I think Pamela's addressed it all.
Perfect.
I'm good, Angel. Thank you.
You bet. How about Tammy Franklin? Do you guys have any questions for us?
Not right now.
Okay, you know where to find us. Let me think. Lisa, for Bruce, do you guys have any questions?
Not right now.
Okay. Trying to think, who have I missed? MediaCom, is MediaCom on here? Do you guys have any questions?
Anyone
I'm going
from
to take silence is a good thing. Who were you going to ask? Lindsay? Yep, perfect. Well, I think, like I told Tammy, if you guys do have questions after this call, you all know where to find us. Our email address for the BEAD program, if you haven't heard it 1,000 times by now, is msbead@bean.ms.gov. If you do have any questions, send them there, and all of my BEAN team members have access to that inbox. I can get it forwarded to Lindsay and the BDO team or the engineers if it's a question that needs consultation with them. We'll respond just as soon as we can. Lindsay, do we have a call next week?
We don't have one at the moment, but
Okay.
if there is something you guys have questions about, want to send those over, we can formulate one. We do have a couple planned, but I don't at this time think we have one for next week. But we'll
And
definitely
it's Memorial Day week, so
Yeah.
I think the plan was to take that one off, and I will go ahead and tell everyone I will be out the following week. So I don't know if you guys are scheduling a call that week or not, but it may be that we push out to the second week of June for our next office hours. But just be looking for an invite when we do get that next office hour scheduled. And we really do appreciate you guys taking the time to attend and ask questions and participate. And I promise as soon as we get NIST approval, we will send everyone an email.
Yes, we will.
All right, well, have a great afternoon. Thank you guys.
Really appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.